and welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash the like, come and join us in the chat. Shout out to Andrew, jumped in the chat at 8:42 a.m. Stream went live. He had thoughts on coaches under pressure, and he wanted to go ahead and get them in. Andrew, we appreciate you getting the conversation started early. It is Coach Week. Happy Coach Week to you and yours. Today, we will be looking at some coaches that are under unique amount of pressure heading into the 2023 season. On Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we will be breaking down the CBS Sports Coach Rankings. We filled out ballots. We turned them in. They came in from all over, and there's an official CBS Sports Coach Ranking that will be unveiled 1 through 69, all the Power 5 coaches. First, you will get 26 through 69 on Tuesday, 1 through 25 on Wednesday. So our Wednesday show in coordination with the unveiling of the official CBS Sports Coach Rankings. These are updated every single May. We get to see who's rising, who's falling. Tom Fornelli's name is on the author line. So remember the great annual tradition of everyone thinking that these are Tom's rankings. Here is where he will get to defend himself. Tom, are the rankings done?
Yeah, I wrote both of the posts over the weekend. I know all the rankings. Nobody else does. And I shared a lot of my thoughts about what I think of my fellow voters in the story. So those will be on Tuesday and Wednesday. There's some surprises in there.
Keep your eye on that. We will be breaking all those down. And again, we've got our ballots to be able to do some comparison and let you know what's going on. Speaking of the week that we have, it's not just Coach Week. It's also the beginning of the Spring Meetings Tour. So we've got the ACC down in Amelia Island. They are gathering together. And this is the first time that we're going to really be able to get all these decision makers together with not necessarily the urgency of any kind of deadline, because my understanding is we will not get any announcements. But boy, we got a lot to talk about. And the key word is revenue. Florida State. We remember that they came out. They were doing their saber rattling. Clemson came out doing their saber rattling. Danny, what's your sense on what we should expect coming out of the ACC spring meetings?
More saber rattling for sure. Like, get them going. Like, come out like Darth Vader out there. And I do think, again, it's something Mike Alford, he already alluded to it. The athletic director of Florida State already said going in, it's going to be a priority and a conversation that he wants to get started. And I think it's crucial to the long-term viability of Florida State, Clemson, but also to the ACC in general. It's something we've talked about on here a lot. But as you mentioned, a lot of it's been through the media before, and now you'll get a lot more voices at the table. A lot more people can, push back. They could get on board, so I think it'll be good because I think you'll find out kind of where people stand with this whole idea.
I agree with Danny. I think it's just saber rattling, to be honest. I don't expect other teams in the league to go along with the idea of revenue sharing. They're not idiots. They're like, yeah, FSU, you're going to leave as soon as you get the chance anyway. I think it's more to get the conversation going and maybe long-term destabilize the league, right? To make it easier to leave before the end of the grant of rights.
Wait, so you think that like at this meeting, the hope is to cause some trouble, to go in there and start getting everybody upset and make things a little bit uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Darth Vader, Danny. The Imperial March is the name of the song that they play when he comes in. It's going to be more of a funeral march. As I've said, the ACC is dead. It's dead in the water.
Yeah, totally.
And this is just another step towards all of that. Like Bud's saying, this is Florida State and Clemson are going to leave eventually. The conference is going to dissolve.
You have like 5 G5 level teams in there that eventually the other 8 teams will say like, we're going to, like, worst case long-term. I think you have 8 teams decide to break away and do their own thing, cut the other 6 out.
Tom and Bud wearing black for the ACC's funeral here on a Monday. Yuck. No, sir. All right,
there's just too much dead weight in this league.
For football.
That's the only sport that matters for revenue. I mean,
I know.
basketball a tiny bit, but yeah.
I know. Nobody forced Florida State to join a basketball league.
Yeah, I mean, that's
30 years ago.
Like Florida State, in terms of the conversations, especially at the university president level, I mean, they're not the newest of the blood, but they're not the oldest of the blood either. This is a sort of interesting. What was it? Florida State had an SEC invitation, turned it down, went to the ACC. Isn't that the way it went back in like 1990?
Mm-hmm.
What I think is interesting, Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated, is a big fan of the show. He has a piece and it dropped like Monday morning, and it was a great, here's setting the table for what we're going to be talking about over the next 30 days, because the next 30 days is the window where, for example, if you want to use a deadline, if San Diego State is going to go to the Pac-12, or if San Diego State is going to go to the Big 12, then they need to be able to make that move if they're going to be there for 2024 by July 1 in order to get the lowest amount of exit fee possible at this time. So there's a lot of belief that whether it's the Pac-12 deal or whether it's any kind of expansion, that we're going to see it in the next little part. There was a section on the ACC, and Ross singled out not just two, Florida State or Clemson, not just even four. A lot of people quickly go to Miami and North Carolina, but that there is a group of seven. You mentioned 8, Bud, that there is a group of 7 right now that are all very much pushing for the unequal revenue distribution, that they're pushing for something that is more merit-based, whatever that may be, whether it's like television ratings or success. So is 7 teams being on one side, or 7 schools being on one side, is that enough to truly destabilize the league and be able to take hold and try and get what you want?
I think the boiling point is 8, because if 8 schools leave or decide hey, I think there's misconceptions. 8 schools have to have a place to go. In theory, 8 schools could be hey, we're all going to form our own league. Peace to the other 6 that don't contribute much. Nobody cares to watch their games, that they drag down ratings, and we're paying an equal share to. So if you could find a dance partner for the 7 and get to 8, maybe you have leverage to get people to vote for some sort of unequal revenue sharing as a very temporary measure, right? But 8 is the crucial number there.
So who are those 8?
You want to guess? No, or do you want to guess the 7?
Florida State, Clemson, Miami,
UNC,
North Carolina. Yeah, I think NC State's in that.
No, NC State, Virginia Tech,
possibly.
So that's 6.
Pitt,
7.
I don't know where Pitt would be. Pitt's a question mark for me.
Really?
Is Virginia going to jump on board?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. What if you get 7, and then you go to Notre Dame to be the 8th?
To break off and start this new league?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was another thing in Ross's piece, is that, of the options, there is that is a nuclear button. It's we're going to get 8 schools. We're going to go form our own league. And that may be the way that you fight the grant of rights. Yeah. And that is bananas to consider, just from my own ACC colored opinion.
What about,
you would need to do some non-conference scheduling, obviously, to fill that out, because you'd only have 7 conference games a year. But
I think college out of conference.
I think the fans of all those teams would absolutely love that, though, because they don't care about half these games anyway. They don't like these teams.
What about Louisville?
I think Louisville
Louisville would be in. That's a good call.
Yeah. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's 8. If we include the ones we're going, NC State, Pitt, Virginia Tech, Louisville.
Wake, Cuse, BC are clear no's.
Right. We were relegating teams the other day. I think they're good Ivy League options.
Totally
we talked
agree.
a little bit about that, but they just feel like they're more about the academics, which is a good thing. Duke, throw a Duke in there too.
What do you think needs, BC, Syracuse, Wake? What would they have to do to keep all this from crumbling?
Be willing to give up less money. But I think that the estimations, unequal.
What if they agreed to spend more money on football? Then would they still be able to get a full share? Because if part of the problem is BC, to be blunt, does not give a damn to the same level that Florida State does about football, but they are happy to take the checks, and they're going to spend commensurate with what their expectations are and what they need. What if instead of cutting BC's share, BC agreed to spend a greater portion of it on football to upgrade the program?
They've already done that somewhat. The schools are definitely spending more on football. I know Swafford was getting into them about that some.
Yeah, I think that seems like a way you win the press conference and the news cycle. that Jim Phillips comes out and is like, and we've gotten like a real commitment, some word that doesn't have a number associated with it and no way to like actually have any accountability. It was like, we've gotten a real commitment from everybody that we're going to be able to invest.
But like in this era, doesn't commit, like, because they have nice facilities. Like, what are you going to do? Build an indoor practice? Like, it's about players and about what are you willing to do to get better as a football program. And I'm thinking NIL, like above and beyond, and what sort of transfers and academics and recruiting. What are you willing to do to break into that gap? Like, what do you do? Like, are you really
let dumb kids in to play football, basically?
Right, exactly. All of it. Like, all of what it takes to be considered a top 50 program. And I'm not even asking to be a top 15, top 25. It's unrealistic for a lot of these programs. But what does it take so that you're not a bottom tier Power 5 school?
Because I'm with you. The unequal revenue distribution is not going to cut it. You have to come up with something else.
I worry about the uneven revenue distribution because those schools are going to struggle even more. Mm-hmm. And then, like, when we're talking about competitive, like, how do you choose the 12 teams for the new playoff? Is it just the ACC champion because the schedule is so weak? Yes. And you're like, that to me is a concern if you're Clemson and Florida State, because then if you're better, there might be a chance you could both get into the 12-team playoff. But if we've already seen this happen already with Clemson and Dabo getting frustrated, man, I can lose one game and I'm out of a 4-team. That's only going to continue. So that's why I do think it's just a patch. It's just a Band-Aid, and it keeps people intact.
Because I think you're onto something there, because I think, honestly, the real problem is the TV deal. It's not the amount of money that BC is putting in. It's not whether the fans care, because, Bud, as you've said a million times, like, for a lot of programs in some of these bigger conferences, like, the money is to take losses. Somebody is in these leagues to get their ass kicked every year, to get some losses and send everybody to bowl games. That's the purpose BC can serve. But if the ACC was getting the same kind of contract that the Big Ten was getting or the SEC was getting, nobody would care about the ratings on those games particularly, or whether the school is investing enough money in, because it'd be like, cool, just keep going 3-9 and helping us get all this money and go to the playoff. So I think that's the one thing that no matter what you do, unless you get a new TV deal, the ACC is not going to solve any of its problems.
I agree, although it is mitigated if you did break off into 8. Most likely. Like, everybody would make significantly more. It kicks the can down the road in terms of the timeline of desperation that you would have if you're Clemson or Florida State or North Carolina, right? I know FSU AD Mike Alford's been out there saying, like, we can't have a $60 million revenue disparity in perpetuity. That's going to add up fast. If you did break off into 8, you wouldn't have to pay out the 6 schools that nobody wants to watch. The per school, the per school money is going to be a lot bigger. So, from that standpoint, it's kind of a mitigation.
Did you see that what he pointed out? Like, UCF going to the Big 12, their media rights contract, the Big 12's is up in 2031. And he pointed out that because the ACC is until 2036, that you could see UCF with a better media rights deal than Florida State. Like, if this thing just ran its course.
I would be shocked if that ever actually happened, but
right,
in theory,
me too. He's just pointing it out as a point of this can't happen. Like, this is ridiculous. And he did bring out Miami too. He's like, UCF could have a better revenue distribution than we could if this thing runs its course. And then you'd be looking up at Florida and UCF, and you're on the bottom tier, programs that have more national championships than both of those. That'd be a tough pill to swallow. And that's why it won't happen.
I mean, they're going to have a real issue in this room, by the way, if they try to go with like an equitable distribution, because I mean, you have some of these schools that are, 12, 15x the eyeballs, right? If you control for who's playing, and like, nobody's ever going to go for that. So even if they do agree to unequal revenue sharing, people are going to be slighted. Like, we're not getting our true value. That this is still charity, blah, 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 blah. So I don't think it's a long-term marriage that can work. There's too much resentment.
By 2026, there's going to be a gap in the ACC per school payout that is probably about $30 million less than what you're going to be seeing from the Big Ten and the SEC. And a unequal revenue distribution model might only put like 5 to 10 million more into Florida State or Clemson. So even if you do that, goes back to the Band-Aid theory, like how much you actually fixing it because you're still operating at a deficit that's only going to continue to grow over time. Again, my sense is we ain't going to have any like news here, but
Agreed.
boy, there's some moving and shaking going on behind the doors in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Coming up on the other side, it is Coach Week, and we're going to get this thing started by looking at the coaches that are under pressure heading into 2023. Hot seat, yes, but also just who needs to deliver in order to change what's going on around that program and that employment. Next.
Two teams in control of their own destiny.
Miraculously, impossibly, beyond their dreams, their expectations.
It's the penultimate round of the UEFA Champions League on CBS and streaming live on Paramount+.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast as Coach Week rolls on, and we focus on some of those coaches that are under the most scrutiny heading into 2023. Bud, you've got some names in the document that you've sorted by severity. You know, we've got some other names out there as well. Do you want to go with the hottest of the hot seats, I guess you could say, the most pressure-filled first, and then we can kind of unwind from there?
Yeah, so I broke this down, really kept it mostly to P5. There's a couple G5s throughout the list. Like I had 3 categories. Pressure, obvious, and they could lose their job this year if things go bad enough. Next category, which we'll get to, pressure to win, which is like to establish good recruiting or to maintain good recruiting, because obviously if you back-to-back bad years on the field may impact your recruiting, or to avoid like a scorching hot seat in 2024. And then the final category should be under pressure if the school actually cares about football, but it's not clear that they do. And that's kind of a smaller category. So for the opening one, I'll throw some names out there. Let's figure out who we want to talk about. Neal Brown, West Virginia. They don't recruit well. They went to the Big 12 to, get a big check. They get the big check. They didn't get stuck in the Big East, but it doesn't seem to be working there. Their win total is 4.5. They'd have to beat that by 1.5 just to get back to a bowl. And they have a new AD who I'm guessing is kind of surveying the landscape there. That one seems kind of obvious to me.
Is that the most obvious in the Power 5 level? Like when you're looking across the landscape and you're trying to figure out somebody who needs to pull a rabbit out of a hat in order to be back for the 2024 season, would that be the name that comes to mind?
It's probably pretty close if it's not, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been there now. He's had 4 seasons. Obviously, one of them was the COVID year, but that was also his best year. Like they went 6-4 in 2020, and they went 4-4 in the Big 12, and those are their best records in both overall and conference the entire time. They've kind of they took a slight step back last year, going to 5-7 after at least getting to bowls the prior 2 years. They're only 3-6 in the conference, and honestly, there was a really good shot he was going to get fired last year. It's just like Bud said, new AD. Came in, probably didn't want to just fire a coach right away and go right into a coaching search. Wanted to, give him a year, see what happens, figure it out. But I think that unless West Virginia has like an unexpected kind of 8-4 kind of season, I feel very comfortable in the idea that this will be Neal Brown's final year if he even completes the season.
Is there enough there for him to win?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, what's a reasonable expectation? And not even, at West Virginia.
Yeah, they're the third worst program in the league, I think. No, I guess not with the new additions. Excuse me. A bottom third program in the league for sure.
But I mean, can you confidently say that this year West Virginia is going to be better than UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, or Houston? I can't confidently say with a guarantee that West Virginia is going to finish above all 4 of them. Or even 3 of them, or 2
or
of
even
them.
Kansas.
Yeah. So,
Kansas
I think that's all we really need to say about Neal Brown's status at West Virginia right now is that it's like those 4 schools are joining the league, and we have more confidence in them winning games right now than we do the Mountaineers.
Totally. I think there's a kind of a two-sided conversation here. One, Neal Brown is not meeting even the minimum level expectations that you should have. And 2, we don't really know what West Virginia's expectations are or should be. Like, it's kind of hard to go to your boosters and used to win a bunch of games in a bad league, the Big East. And now be like, all right, our new expectation is 6-6 is a major success based on our geography, based on our inability to recruit, et cetera. but I still don't think that like he's meeting those. Obviously,
I think 6-6 is. I think that is the bare minimum. You think it should be a huge success? So I think 6-6 should be like, okay, that's
with the way they schedule their non-conference, they have Penn State and Pitt, and they go play non-conference games.
I meant leading up to this point. Yeah, they got their AD's got to do help them out a little bit better. If it's Neal Brown or somebody else.
West Virginia football should be in bowl games, and if you're not in a bowl game, then you should be close, or there should be reasons for it. I think the West Virginia football has history, tradition, culture, all those things to the point where even if you've got the geographic disadvantage, you need to be in bowl games. Multiple years not in the postseason is not acceptable. Losing records is not acceptable. I think that's I think for a West Virginia fan, that's acceptable. That is reasonable expectations. All right, Jimbo Fisher. That's too easy, right? I mean, he's like, if he goes 4-8, oh,
he's not going 4-8.
If he goes 6-6,
how does he's not getting fired? They just can't, right? I mean,
no, I think they can.
You go one more. You think they would?
This is why I put Mel Tucker on the second list and Jimbo on the first. I think they can. You got Texas joining the league. Texas, I mean, when these odds to make the playoff come out, Texas is going to be pretty high up there.
So somebody's or a few people are writing that check, is what you're saying, or would they have?
If he misses the bowl, yeah, I think he'll be out.
So but if he goes 6-6, you think he survives? Because I think he's gone at 6-6. I think if it's another 7-5, 6-6 kind of year, it's done. They're going to be mad.
You're in. It also depends on what happens. How does the offense look? Who are your 7 wins? Who are your 5 losses? Like, what does it look like?
3 of them would probably be New Mexico, Abilene Christian, and Louisiana Monroe.
That's the thing is, for me, it's the SEC record. If he goes out there and goes 2-6 or even 3-5 against conference opponents, losing record against conference opponents could be damning.
The offense has gotten worse every single year he's been there. I think that's going to be a large part of this, obviously.
Morgan in the chat points out that crude's up 2% today. Bad news for Jimbo Fisher. That man needs to be betting against the oil markets. We do not want Texas A&M's boosters to be able to liquidate quickly and move assets around to pay off a contract. That's but look, you bring in Bobby Petrino, right? You know, you've got a situation where some of the offensive talent should be in position to take a big step forward. Defensively, they've been rock solid. Like this, the actual product on paper right now should not go 2-6 or 3-5 in the SEC.
Correct.
Their win total 7.5.
God, I mean, how is it not higher than that at this point? I mean, based on what you hired him to come in and do, to have the win total at 7.5 going into what is this, his 4th or 5th season?
Wait, this might be year 6.
Is this 6? Okay, so to have it at 7.5 going into year 6, when you signed him to a 10-year deal, $75 million guaranteed, and that's another part of it too. Like, I think the buyout is low enough now where I don't think that's the problem. I think if Texas A&M has a problem, it's they've got to pay that buyout. But now when Jimbo signed that deal, it was like, oh my God, can you believe that kind of money? But now our coaching contracts are for Texas A&M to go get the next guy to replace him. They're going to have to pay that coach. I think that's where the problem comes in. But I can't sit here and believe we're talking about this at this point. It's like, well, if he goes 500 in the SEC, he should stick around. So that's what they hired him for, to go.
I mean, put up, and it's pretty easy fodder, and everybody starts to do it. But put up his record with Kevin Sumlin at the same time, and he's falling behind. He's lagging now, right? Because the first couple of years was like, oh well, he had Johnny Manziel, and but the longer you get this body of work going, it is not look that much better. And the A&M fans, because I said this a lot early, and they were like, oh well, the recruiting, look at all the optimism, and he's bringing all this, infuse this life, and we're still crushing it, and the success is going to come at some point. They're going to start expecting to get that. I still think 7-5 he survives, but I think it's very much coming into next year. It's a hot seat. Also, I think a lot of it depends on what happens with Petrino.
Yeah.
I thought it was that
Yes.
that relationship. How does it unfold? What does it look like? Like if he pulls back the reins and takes back over the play calling midway through the season because it's not working, then I think all bets are off the table. Like if this thing just is a disaster, my goodness.
So is Petrino like a human shield? So that way it's like if things don't work, we'd be like, well,
You told me,
tried
guy.
it
You
your
told me to
way.
do this. This is what you
I
guys
tried it
wanted.
your way. I brought him in. We're going to fire him, and we're going to go back. We're going to give it one more crack with me running the show here. We're going to go, this year doesn't count.
This is an incredible. There are like 15 super, super fascinating storylines throughout the entire country right now. And Jimbo Fisher is like this one is so meaty, and it still might be like 9th if you were to try to power rank them. This is going to be an amazing fall. Also, if we want to talk about danger spots, what if Texas A&M loses at Miami?
I wish that meeting was later in the season just so we could get like Jimbo and Mario at midfield and see how tired they both look. Like they'll still be too fresh early in the year. So yeah.
For both of those programs, I think that's one of those big either momentum starters or momentum killers.
Yes.
Like huge for like what you could look forward to if you get that game. Now, it's going to be interesting.
And Bud can speak to this too, but that's also like on the momentum on the recruiting trail because both of these are like recruiting monsters that are trying to sell like it's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. And like those early losses, boy, you're going to start trending towards the wrong direction. And then you start to be like, oh, is how long is he going to be there? How long is he going to be there? You're going to be able to keep him on board, hold a recruiting class together. It's a tricky one for Jimbo Fisher. So 7.5 is the win total right now.
Yeah.
I'm actually
or
glad.
8.5. There's kind of juice both ways. I don't think he gets fired. I think they probably go somewhere in that range and they'll fire him after 2024. But if it goes badly, I think they could pull the trigger.
They beat LSU last year.
It was a weird year. They beat LSU.
Weird year. That's
like they lost to that zombie Auburn team.
Yeah.
Right.
They also
were
lost
really sick against UF.
Ole Miss.
Yeah, they lost to Ole Miss. They lost at home to UF, but I think they were pretty sick, and like they had a lot of guys out with some kind of flu.
Some kind.
Yeah.
That's where I think they kind of like. I mean,
they luck boxed a win against Arkansas. Remember the Katie Jefferson reach over the goal line and the ball comes out and it's 99-yard return
the other way.
Like
Chase Bryce beat him though.
It's true.
Fair and
square.
There's a really dangerous stretch here. It's a 4-week stretch, and if this goes badly, I think you could see like a midseason firing. Right? Auburn, Arkansas neutral, Bama, and then at Tennessee.
Oh man.
All back to back. Like that's rough.
That's how Jimbo ends up as the West Virginia head coach for the 2024 season.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Almost beat Bama when Bama didn't have Bryce.
That's why we just started it right there. Those two tying in together. Like we're already puppet master.
Listen, here we go. This is it's scripted, right? Where's Paul? Yeah, everything's scripted. All right. So speaking of West Virginia, former West Virginia head coaches, let's do one more before the break. Current Big 12 return to the Big 12 for Dana Holgorsen as the head coach of Houston. And we mentioned that win total on the air, I believe, last show. That's at like 4, right? 4.5. I throw that one in the Neal Brown category. I don't know where the answers are right there. They'll have Donovan Smith, the former Texas Tech quarterback, likely as the Cougars starting quarterback. They've lost a lot of talent on both sides of the ball from the last couple of years. Remember, this was a 10-win team just a couple of years ago, and it has been really, really disappointing with their performance last season. Any light there? Or are we just going to go ahead and imagine that Garrett Riley, just go ahead and puppet master this all the way to have Garrett Riley as the Houston head coach for 2024?
What was the quote from Tillman Fertitta a couple of years ago when they hired Dana? It was like, we're not paying him to go 8-5.
7-5. Yeah, we're not paying
and
him.
The Houston president said we fire people for 9 wins. Remember when Applewhite was there?
And Dana's won 9 games in one of his 4 seasons. Yeah, I would say he's under pressure.
somebody has to win some games in the bottom of that league, right? Maybe it's them, maybe it's not. What number keeps him safe?
Well, I'll tell you what. Shout out to Don in the chat. The Thunderdome game is October 12th. West Virginia and Houston. 2 coaches enter, only 1 leaves.
Lose your own home match.
Yeah, that's very much a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, I think give any pass because of the jump in leagues. Like,
yeah,
I do. I see a yes and I see a no.
I think so.
I think if they go bowling in their first year in the Big 12, I think he's fine. Like if they go 6-6, if they go 4-8, 3-9, I don't know how much of a pass he's going to get.
Plus, you could totally see, and it might be one of those deals where you've got something worked out ahead of time. If you know you can get Garrett Riley, and you've got it lined up, and it'll help. And then guess what? Next year, Oklahoma, Texas gone out of the conference, becomes much more competitive. That's where I think a lot depends on kind of what Jimmy Sexton has cooking.
Yeah. The 6-6 might not do it, even with the jump, in my opinion, just because it would likely be a continuation of the trends, right? You notice that the insides just don't look good, right? From a personnel standpoint, just from the way that things are going, the way that team performs sometimes in close games, it can be a little befuddling from time. Yeah, bud.
Over under on coaching changes in the state of Texas this offseason.
So we just saw
2.
Let me go reverse. We just saw North Texas and North Texas and who else?
Texas State.
Texas State.
So UTEP, Demel, Rice.
When you
UTSA
say
could be a
coaching
promotion
changes,
candidate.
when you say coaching changes, do you mean firings, or are we going to count coaches who might leave for bigger jobs?
I say we count coaches who might leave for bigger jobs.
So trailer on alert.
Right, yeah, it's kind of sneaky. Jimbo,
Dana.
Maybe 2 is a bad number. Maybe it should be 2.5.
Yeah, over. Over when we consider, because also, I mean, you're Jeff Traylor and you do.
Rice.
You think Bloomgren would be out?
I don't think Rice is like the kind of place that the seed is, boiling on him at any point, but you never know. Thank you.
Well done.
But I do think that, it's been a few years and they haven't really kind of taken the step forward at any point. So it could be a reset. I don't expect it to, but I wouldn't put him under pressure, but I would say there's some pressure there.
Coming up on the other side, got a couple more coaches who could very much be on the hot seat and some big names from Power 5 programs that are really, really need to win in order to establish some momentum. We'll get into that and more next.
Every goal from every match. The best way to watch all the Europa League action is back. Don't miss the semi-finals on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
But a couple more names that you had on your, very high pressure list: Jeff Hafley at Boston College, Tom Allen in Indiana, Ryan Silverfield at Memphis. If you were to rank those 1, 2, 3, what would you say the pressure or the hot seat sort of levels are?
Probably Hafley first, I would guess. Allen pretty high up there. Their win total is 3.5. So Indiana is one of those teams where if you take out the COVID year, everything else looks pretty bad. Silverfield, a really bad AAC this year, I think. I mean, I think the AAC could be worse than the Sun Belt. So if you don't make some noise there at Memphis this year, when will you?
And then you think Hafley's probably okay, or do you think that
No, I think you probably need to make a bowl, right? I would think. I mean, it's Boston College. They're generally a team that can make bowls. They just eventually though, vibes and stuff, you get that injured all the time. It's the one year that they lost all the quarterbacks, and next year they lose all the linemen. They're playing D linemen on offensive line in week 7. They lose to UConn.
I think Tom Allen's seed is hotter than Hafley's.
I think Allen's is hotter than Hafley's.
I think so too. I think it has to do with
Does Indiana care about football to that level to where they He's a pretty good vibes guy. I remember the whole love everybody thing.
Yeah, but they've also got a lot of money, a
Yeah.
lot more money than BC does. And you look around at the Big Ten right now, like, the other like the rest of the conference, even the bottom teams are kind of making those moves. Like, I think honestly, we haven't talked. I think we could see quite a bit of turnover in the Big Ten this year. Like, I think Tom Allen's in some trouble. I think Mel Tucker could be in trouble. I think Greg Schiano could be in trouble. Like, this new TV deal is probably going to spur some action with some athletic directors who are now looking at themselves flush with a little extra cash.
We think Rutgers could be better to Schiano?
Yeah.
I don't know. Really?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, Schiano comes in and it's Rutgers. So, you're like, well, we got to give him some time. And it's Schiano. He's had success there. What has Rutgers improved at in his season since taking over? They've actually kind of gone the other direction.
Effort.
They're better. I mean, like they're legitimately
They're not
better.
winning more
I don't
games,
know.
though.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, they
They're
will.
winning more.
If you put them in the Big Ten West, they'd be going bowling pretty frequently.
I-
No, they
don't-
won't. They keep losing to the Big Ten West, bud. They're the
No,
team
but
that
like
everybody in the Big Ten West looks and hopes they get from the East.
They could play some closer games though, as opposed to like the blowouts that they get when they play the truly good teams. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they would lose closer, but they'd still be losing. Like, I mean, they're losing to Maryland, they're losing to Indiana, they're losing to Michigan State. It's not just the top of the division that's kicking their butt. They're in going into year 5 and they don't have a quarterback yet. It's like you should probably have a QB at this point. He doesn't have to be great, but you should at least have someone who you feel comfortable with as a starter in a Power 5, and I don't think they have that.
Who are the quarterbacks in the Big Ten West? Like, I mean, they play Big Ten West style. They're just stuck in the East. There's no good quarterbacks in the West.
Okay. Who are Rutgers quarterbacks?
Do
you know him off the top of your head?
Gavin Wimsatt. Yeah, Gavin Wimsatt for sure.
Mhm.
I don't know the other kid. Wimsatt's spring game numbers weren't great.
Mm-hmm. Cade McNamara, Luke Altmaier. I don't know who's replaced. Oh, Hudson Card. Yeah, I think the Big Ten West has better quarterbacks than Rutgers does. Just my belief.
I mean,
Tanner Mordecai. I mean, it's
they got better QBs.
not in prior years.
He took over a program that was in like competitively non-competitive, and we gave him flowers for the play hard part at the beginning. But I agree with Tom. We're too deep into this, and Rutgers has not gotten better.
I don't think Rutgers is a team that can make bowl games unless they schedule themselves 3 non-conference layups. Like, expecting them to win 4 games in the Big Ten is not realistic under the current divisional structure.
Thankfully, the Big Ten for Rutgers is going to get rid of the Power 5 requirement for non-conference, so maybe they'll have a better shot of doing that in the future.
And really disappointing for whatever Big 12, ACC, or Pac-12 school was looking for that Rutgers non-conference game to satisfy their own Power 5 requirement to be able to get that extra win on there.
Sometimes you got to fire a guy though, just a lot of your boosters, and tell them like, we really believe in the bones of this place. This place can be better, to keep donating, right? Like, it's not a good pitch to your boosters to be honest and say, the money we got it because we got the Big Ten check. We're not a program that can win in this league, right? So be happy with going 4-8.
I also think that works against Schiano is like, when Rutgers joined the Big Ten, its basketball program was awful too. And it was just getting dog walked by everybody in the Big Ten. But guess what? Their basketball program's kind of good. So they made the right hire there. So they're seeing improvement in there. Now they're going to be looking over at the football team and be like, well, what the hell's wrong with you? Now, obviously, we all know it's different. It's easier to improve your program basketball, football, but I think that adds on more pressure too.
All right. Billy Napier. Ooh, year 2. Win total 5.5. Is that what it's like in these markets?
Yeah.
It's hot.
Danny, where's the answer? What's gonna happen here? How's he do it? What's the blueprint?
I don't know if there is one. I mean, maybe the defense steps it up, and the defense, what we saw in the spring game, could be better. I don't. What did they get rid of? Because I think it was a mistake to get rid of Dan Mullen. I thought he was the perfect fit for the Gators. I really do. Personality, what he brought to the table, the wins. the attitude even of, hey, we're not going to show up in a bowl game. We only play for championships. It all fits perfectly with the Florida Gator mentality. If they could have just waited till NIL got here and taken a little bit of that load off recruiting, I think it would have been perfect. That being said, if it's 5-7, he's done, right?
I don't think they're going to fire him if he misses a bowl, because who's doing the firing? Scott Strickland. And if Strickland has to do the fire, that's like 2 bad hires in a row and 3 firings he had to make. They're not exactly killing it in basketball. So I think he gets time. I had him in the middle category, which is like, you need to have a decent year in order to keep or establish recruiting momentum. And like right now, they're working on the top 10 class. That would be back-to-back solid classes for them. Certainly a step up for Mullen's recruiting, which Napier, I'm sure, would point to and be like, I'm in this mess because Dan Mullen didn't give a damn about recruiting. And like the recruiting he did was not befitting a program like the Gators. I think
wasn't he top 10 though, like right around there?
The 1 year, but kind of took a bunch of guys that were kind of like just to boost the class, I think. Not expected to qualify for school that late in the game. That's why they were available. I think you got to at least make a bowl game if you want to keep recruiting well.
That's pretty good.
Who else is in this section that stands out to you?
Venables and Cristobal. Oklahoma's going to the SEC. We all expect them to play pretty darn well this year, but if Venables drops to 7-5, his seat is scorching hot in 2024 as they enter the league. Like, they're not going to fire him, but that will hurt recruiting, and then you go to the SEC the next year.
I think that Oklahoma can be a 9-win team.
Yeah, I agree.
Their win totals, was it 9.5 or 8? It's high.
A lot of these Big 12 teams are not very good this year, I don't think.
So that would be a good thing for Oklahoma, obviously.
Yeah, right. They need to capitalize.
You have the best or second best quarterback in the league. You should be able to get in there. You had all of those close losses. You hope that some of them flip the other way. You take some improvement on defense. You can very quickly flip this from 6-6 regular season to 9-3. That's something that seems attainable. Whereas I was a little bit gloomy on the outlook of some of these other coaches that we've talked about, I feel like Brent Venables is, I agree, under pressure, but I'm less concerned about the long-term future there. I think that he can deliver in 2023.
9.5 is the total, and he's got an ace in the hole in Jackson Arnold, the quarterback in the
Great
wings
call.
waiting.
Mhm.
Mario, don't you think Mario? I think he gets another year almost regardless.
Oh yeah, this is just purely
Yes.
to keep recruiting up. Like I think
Yeah.
he's going to get a ton of time at Miami.
Yeah, being
But
a
like,
guy.
that is under pressure. You are under pressure to put wins on the field in order to keep this thing from backsliding.
Well, they missed a bowl last year and looked incompetent. So, yeah, I think they are under pressure to get enough wins to where they can recruit well. The thing he does is recruit. Nobody's like, I'm going to hire Mario Cristobal for his in-game coaching, right? Like that's not a thing. So if they were to have a bad season, I don't think they will. If they were, then that could hurt recruiting enough to where it's like, what would you say you do here, right?
What is it you would say that you do here?
Yes.
What about Sark? You had him on this list.
I think Sark absolutely has pressure. Same thing as Venables. Like he hasn't cashed all these wins that were given him yet in the offseason. I think they will, but like, what if Texas goes 8-4?
God,
That's
against the
huge
league
pressure.
where there is like, if you saw a Texas Tech pull a TCU this year and come out and win or Kansas State again. I mean, just one of these programs that's not Oklahoma or Texas. If one of them come out of the woodwork and win the Big 12 and Texas doesn't, that to me is devastating. Like this is the year where it has to be Texas or anybody else. Like it's all the stars are aligned for them to step up this year.
That's where like all the mid-tier SEC teams are so fired up because now they're not going to get jumped in line because
Right.
Texas and Oklahoma are going to come in on shaky ground and they're going to fall into that second quadrant, even though they've got the big brand name and they come with a money valuation that's going to drive up the dollars. They are not ready to come in and start winning double-digit games if that were to happen. For the record, Texas is going to be in the playoff. Texas is back, as we all know.
That's
It
right.
is so scary that like you do your numbers on the Big 12 It's like, damn it, the value is on betting Texas. And you're like, oh, do I really trust this? Like, oh, this is brutal. They're like, fine, you slide your money across the counter, and you don't feel good about it at all.
Their win total is the same as Oklahoma's, 9.5.
I like Texas
because they play Alabama.
Right.
Right. If we did conference win totals, it would be like 0.6 or 0.7 higher, I think.
Texas is in the playoff. Florida State's in the playoff. USC's in the playoff. Georgia's in the playoff. There's a school I didn't include in that list who won't be in the playoff, who also is not on this list, but I think their coach should be, or not. Let me rephrase that. I do not think he should be. I think he will be, and he already is. Ryan Day at Ohio State has lost to Ohio State the last 2 years, has not won the Big Ten either the last 2 years, though he has been to the playoff in 3 of his 4 years. But if they lose to Michigan again, and I think if that's possible, I mean, I don't know, he is going to be in trouble. And I think that is a certain kind of pressure for Ryan Day, where it's like, I can't just do, winning games is great. Getting to the playoff is great. But if I'm losing to Michigan and not winning the Big Ten, that's pressure.
I'm so there. Ryan Day is under pressure. Ryan Day is walking in with a roster that is top 3 in the country and maybe top 2 in the country. And he is dealing with the losing streak to Michigan that you mentioned. And he has a changeover at the quarterback position. Like Kyle McCord needs to be that guy, because everyone believes that everything else is just going to fall right into place. He's going to step right in. He's going to throw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. And Ohio State's going to go 11-1 or 12-0 and make it to the college football playoff. But Michigan is too good. Talk about another coach that's like under pressure, but not hot seat pressure. 2024 was James Franklin's year. We've been talking about that for 3 years. Penn State is supposed to be peaking. Michigan is locked and loaded. It is not crazy to think that Ohio State could go 10-2 with losses to Michigan and Penn State. But if Ohio State goes 10-2 with losses to Michigan and Penn State, Ryan Day is feeling the heat from Ohio State fans.
What are you going to do? Fire him? I mean, it's
yeah.
If you're going to put him on this, maybe you have another column where it's like, all right, needs to start doing better in the very few specific big games to where he doesn't get fired in 25 or something.
But like, pressure requires people with passion. And that's what Ohio State has more than anybody is nuts. Like they have nuts who are not reasonable or rational about their love for Ohio State and Ohio State football and all of the good, cold calculating analysis of the Ryan Day era is that he's been phenomenal and absolutely delivered on expectations, but that doesn't do anything for the emotions of these people. Like, what are they going to do? Fire him? I don't know, but we're just talking about pressure, and he will feel pressure, and he might not like that pressure. That maybe
he could leave by himself.
Yeah, I mean, like, fine, forget you guys. I'm going to the NFL. Like, there are ways that this thing could end up changing that don't necessarily require Gene Smith issuing a dismissal or a firing of Ryan Day,
which he
School's
might
literally named after nuts Buckeye,
which he might have been feeling if they didn't have that game against Georgia in the semis.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't showcase that ability, like it made CJ Stroud a ton of money that game alone. I think it also bought Ryan Day some leeway this offseason, because if he doesn't have that performance, I mean, you can make a case they could have beat him.
But you could make it 100. Like, there are 1,000 cases. They're all written by Ohio State fans and dissertations that have been sent to every media member through and through. Like, Ohio State played well enough to win that game and have a shot at the national championship.
See, Patrick, he was the line in our chat. Replace Day with Heartline. I also think that's an internal pressure that could be real.
What?
From the fan base, they love Brian Hartline. He played there. He's one of their own. He's crushed it in recruiting. I think that's a very unique internal pressure that he could see, that Ryan Day could see and feel. You don't think so?
Oh, I agree.
I mean, look,
if he starts getting Florida, he was up for the Cincinnati job. If you could lose him potentially to another job, I think that's a real pressure that you could see emerge.
if you lose him another job and he proves to actually be good at the head coaching thing, which we have no idea if he'd be, you're Ohio State. Just go get him back. He's not going to get like Alabama or a place.
How many games did Ryan Day have as a head coach before Ohio State hired him again?
At least he's been like a really successful coordinator, right?
Well, what if Brian Hartline's a really successful coordinator? What if the offense is very good and he's a great recruiter?
Yeah, but if you're Ohio State, you're going to know who's actually running the offense.
I think we just
Brian Day's running the offense and you lose. Isn't that another reason to fire him?
Now they didn't fire Brian Kelly, but Notre Dame just made the similar decision with Marcus Freeman where they're like, well, we think we've got our guy. He hasn't proven absolutely anything, but we need to hire a new head coach and we think we got him right here. I don't, again, if Ryan Day were to go to the NFL, I think Brian
Hartline's his job.
Promoted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a good chance. I don't know if it would be a guarantee, but I think he'd definitely be the favorite. But again, I want to make it clear because I have mentioned this on this show before, and I have seen my name pop up on Ohio State message boards as if I'm saying Ryan Day should be fired if they don't beat Michigan. I do not think that should be the case. I'm saying it will be the case. He will be on the hot seat.
He has more pressure on him than any coach who has gone 45-6 in the history of college football.
Mm-hmm.
No coach has gone 45-6 and had more pressure to succeed at the highest level than Ryan Day.
And it's a reflection of how dumb this sport has become because of the playoff.
Yes. The sport's always been dumb.
No, but I mean, it's taken it to a different. No, yeah, great, but it's been dumb in fun ways. Now it's becoming dumb in just like, well, he needs to be fired because he hasn't won a national title in 2 years.
Deion Sanders have pressure on him?
No, I think he does. If
every coach has pressure on him, but what, like he has, I'm going to lose my job pressure on him?
No, but I think he has pressure to show big time improvement because they're not trying to do the slow rebuild. They're not like, hey, like the next recruiting class I'm going to bring in is going to be big time. They took 60 transfers. That's your rebuild right there. Like a lot of those guys, unless they get graduate transfer status coming up, they're stuck on your roster. So there's pressure to have hit and to make sure that Louis is actually Louis. If it's a bunch of Samsonite, there's going to be a hell of a lot of pressure.
But if it doesn't, like they go 4-8 in year one with all these transfers, is it not easy just to say, well, yeah, we had a whole bunch of transfers, needed a year to get to figure it out in gel, we'll be fine next year. Like it's not hard for him to get out of that pressure.
Assuming they're better next year. Like he's not going to get fired, but I do think that the way that they did the rebuild does put pressure on him to win immediately. Also, from a media standpoint, like look at their schedule. If they start getting boat raced, Deion's incredibly good at staying in the media and staying in the news. But there was kind of a fascination with what he was doing at Jackson State because they had such a big talent advantage and they're winning all the time, right? Like how many people are watching the YouTube videos if they go 3-9 or 4-8?
Or want him to come sit on the desk at college game day or like come and do a bunch of appearances. You want to talk about your 2-10 team? See,
I think he gets a hall pass. I think this year he gets a hall pass.
Yeah, who's under more pressure at Colorado? Rick George. He's under more pressure because Deion's his fourth coach?
Rick George is under a tremendous amount of pressure. Mm-hmm. He has hitched his administrative career probably to this decision.
They're all in on making this work too. I mean, like the way they let him take transfers, as opposed to like they did not let Carl Zarell's staff take transfers. So like they've altered administrative rules inside that, like that's just what admissions will accept. They're all in. Like this has to work there for Rick George.
You guys realize I didn't I see this in a lot of football fan bases. Colorado's fan base is pretty delusional right now about what could happen in year one. We all realize this, right?
Oh,
yeah, the win total's 3, by the way.
I know. But I talked to an insider. I'll just say I want to leave it very vague, but he said 7 wins. 7 wins next year to start it off. I mean, Joel Klatt has said.
Tell Joel.
Was it Joel? Thinks we're going to win 7 games?
More optimistic, saying 7 wins. I think you lose some of the momentum, but it's almost like Texas. Because I do think Texas after year one with Sark was brutal, right? 5-7, but then they got Arch Manning, and I think that's what you would see happen with Deion is he'd hit it right back. We need better players. He'd go back, steal another couple from Florida State, go out and sign whoever he could, and I think he would bring it. I think he gets a pass this year.
he just doesn't have a soft opening. He's a restaurant that doesn't get a chance to see how things are going before the reviewers come. We're going to be there week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Like we are going
to go viral,
but he did it to himself.
Yeah.
With this style of roster rebuild, like you bring the pressure upon yourself if you use all these transfers that you're going to possibly take over a couple of years on 60 new guys, because you're stuck with them. Like you can't transfer again unless you're a graduate transfer.
What's going to go viral?
Deion losing it on his team in week 9 or 10.
Oof.
Yeah, because I do think he's an old school guy, and I could see him telling guys to pack it in and saying, well, we'll get 60 more in here next year. If you're not buying in, if you're not giving me the effort, we're going to look for more.
He's gonna go full Saban on him. He's gonna slam the headset in the hat.
Yeah.
Nick Saban have pressure on him?
Nick Saban puts pressure on himself, Chip.
Yeah,
right, Greeny.
There's the answer.
All right, Greeny.
I'm telling you, the air in Tuscaloosa makes it very tough to be a head coach. All right, we will be back on Wednesday with the CBS Sports Coach Rankings. We'll also have some of our opinions from our ballots, but this is a consensus ranking at cbssports.com that you will be able to see. It is all of the Power 5 coaches. Very interesting how all of that has changed. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Brunelli. You can follow him at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Tom, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Chip.